Hi everyone, this is Diana from Living on the Fault Lines, a space on the internet where I'm talking about healing after loss, including the very tragic loss of suicide. And the reason I'm talking about it is that 4.5 years ago, I found myself in the aftermath when my husband took his life. And as the mother of 3 young children, I found the aftermath terrifying. And I wanted to create a better legacy. So I began writing and exploring ways to do that. And today, I'm really excited to have my friend Dina Proctor join us. She is doing this very cool meditation work, and her work is really special to me. In fact, if you have a chance to get her book, this is it, Madly Chasing Peace. Very life-changing. And Dina is a life and business coach, inspirational speaker, and best-selling author of Madly Chasing Peace, How I Went from Hell to Happy in 9 Minutes a Day. And after hitting emotional rock bottom, she quite unintentionally created the process called 3x3 meditation. It's a 3-minute, 3 times a day process that enabled her to transform every aspect of her life, from weight loss and banishing addictive cravings to reconstructing addictive relationships. Reconstructing relationships. This simple yet incredibly effective method has gained the support of Jack Canfield and Dr. Bruce Lipton, and is now helping thousands of people around the world. So Dina, welcome.
Thank you, Diana, so much. It's just, I love everything that you're doing and creating, and it's great to share this space with you right now.
Well, it's an honor to have you here, and I love your meditation work because I know for myself, meditation was such a really big part of my healing process. But for a lot of people, you know, the 20 minutes a day thing twice a day can be quite overwhelming. So I would love it if you would share your story and kind of how you got into this and how you developed the 3x3 meditation, and then we can move into a little bit more of how it might help people who are in the aftermath of suicide.
I think it's so important to realize that the space that we hold inside of ourselves, what we're seeing, how we're perceiving the world, how we have the relationship with ourselves and what we think about ourselves and what's going on in our lives can all be altered and bettered through a simple process of meditation. So I'm so happy to share kind of how that opened up for me. Towards the end of 2008 is when I hit my rock bottom points in my life. I was in my early 30s. And I had spent the previous 10 or 12 years in and out of clinical depression. In my early 20s, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. And all through, even when I was a little kid, like I remember being in grade school and high school and just thinking like, all my friends are so happy. It just seems like they're so carefree. And I felt like there was something different about me. Like maybe I wasn't pretty enough or smart enough, or it just felt like there was this empty hole inside of myself, like this emotional black hole. That's how I kind of term it, inside of myself that just never felt like it could fill up. And in my 20s, I decided, because I had been a psychology major in college, and I thought, you know, maybe I'll get help for this. Maybe I'm having depression. They diagnosed me with major depressive disorder. I went through periods of being on antidepressants. I tried several different antidepressant medications, and none of them really worked with my body chemistry. I'm sure they work for tons and millions of other people, but nothing I was taking was really resonating with my body and what I needed. I tried different group therapies. For a while, I was on half leave of work so that I could do all this depression work and try and get my therapy and medication up to par. In my late 20s, because I felt like I was doing all of these things to fix myself and nothing was really working. You know, all of these therapists and well-meaning, helpful people and understanding doctors and all of these different antidepressant, anti-anxiety medications, like nothing was just hitting home. And in the meantime, while I was doing all of this kind of healing work, I was also changing everything about my outside circumstances. I thought, you know, if I only meet the one, that'll be what fills this hole inside of myself. If I only find the job that's going to be perfect for me. So I was changing cities, jobs, apartments, boyfriends, getting new cars. Like every 9 months, I would completely up level my life. You know, I would just completely move and change everything because I just thought, I need a fresh start. I need a fresh start. Well, after so many times of doing that and so many years with the therapies and medications, I was reaching a point where I was feeling desperate. And for years, I can remember I didn't grow up an atheist, but in my 20s, I became kind of I didn't care if there was anything greater than myself, and I didn't believe in anything because I thought if there's some kind of God, maybe he'd like reach out and help me by this point. You know, it just felt like there's no one here that's helping. There's nothing that can be helped. There's something weird about me and it's unfixable. So I would go to bed at night and just pray to nobody because I didn't really believe in God, but I would just kind of hold that intention of, if this is going to be all there is, it's really okay if I don't wake up in the morning. Like, that's just how I felt for so long. And in my later 20s, I moved into yet another living situation, and I moved in with people that were, kind of acquaintances of mine, not terribly close friends, but they were a little bit of drinkers and a little bit of partiers, and they were not alcoholic at all. It was just, beer or two after work and maybe going out on the weekends, that sort of thing. But I had never been a partier. I'd never really been a drinker. So it was it was a lifestyle change for me. And when they were having a beer after work, I would have a beer after work. And after a few days and a few weeks, it was like, gosh, this really feels better, because all of these negative thoughts and these self-hatred that I'm feeling and this inner restlessness would kind of ease when I would have this drink. And I met another group of people, and they were partiers, and I ended up going out all the time. And after several weeks, like, it really was a matter of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 months, I became an everyday drinker. Every night I could feel like, in the afternoon at work, I would feel that craving, like, oh, I can't wait to get home and have that drink. And after several months, maybe 5 or 6 months, I became an around-the-clock drinker, because I would wake up kind of with a little bit of a hangover, and then somebody told me, oh, drink a little bit in the morning, you'll feel better. Well, then it keeps coming back, and anyway, I developed this horrific addiction to alcohol over the span of just a few months. And I really think it was because of the desperation I had inside of myself, because it was like a solution to this horrible problem. That's probably why alcohol hadn't occurred to me earlier in my life, because I wasn't at such a desperate level inside of myself. So anyway, I spent probably 2 or 3 years with constant alcohol in my bloodstream. I was drinking in the morning, I was drinking at lunchtime, I was drinking at work, I was drinking after work, just all night. And I felt like I don't want to quit drinking, because I don't know what it's going to feel like to be with my emotions again, but I can't live with it, but I can't live without it. And during this time of my alcohol addiction, I started becoming a person that I couldn't recognize. There were probably several months, maybe a year, that I couldn't look in my own eyes in the mirror because I couldn't believe who I was becoming. When I became heavy in addiction, I cared a lot less about things. And I also tried to, it didn't matter to me being in integrity. My friendships didn't matter to me as much anymore. I just had this kind of, I don't care about everything. I was stealing money. I was lying to all of my friends. I had alcohol hidden in my bedroom where I was living. It was just, I couldn't live with who I was becoming, with who I had become. And that is the point where I planned a date to take my own life. And that's why I planned a date for my own suicide. I had just done one too many things that I couldn't live with myself for. And suicide had been something that was more of like a fantasy, or hey, that'll be my solution if it gets that bad. And finally it just got that bad where I knew I couldn't quit drinking. I didn't want to quit drinking. I didn't even think it would solve anything to quit drinking. But I also just couldn't see myself living anymore. I just couldn't see there being any value in living anymore. And so I guess I'll pause there to see if you have any questions, but I'll transition us into how I developed the meditation practice.
No, I love that, because I think that's so many people's journey. And I know even for myself, in the first few months after my husband died, there was, this, it's a sense of freedom, isn't it? That alcohol disconnects you from your emotions. It totally disconnects you from the emotional body. And of course, there's a reckoning, because the next morning you're going to feel lousy, and it's like the voices get even louder. But I know for me, I did go through a period where it was just kind of that, oh, I can just be numb for a little while, and I didn't spiral into drinking, around the clock or anything, but I definitely started to notice that, hey, this is kind of becoming something that is probably not really that healthy for me, and I had to explore that a little bit deeper. But I think your experience speaks for a lot of people. I think in today's culture, alcohol is a huge problem for women in particular, and we don't really think too much about, I know women who consume a bottle or two a night, and that's, that's a lot of alcohol to be putting in your system, and then it's just messing with your brain chemistry. So I appreciate you sharing all that, because I think this is a lot of people's story, and how it can take you down that path into thinking that there's just nothing else. There's no other exit off of this highway, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, so no, carry on. Because what I really would love to hear is your shift, how that happened, because I think that's the big mystery for people. How some people are able to take that situation that you were in and step into another space. And, what is that? How do we create that for people? And I heard an interview by Dr. Gabor Mate, and he made this very interesting. He was speaking of addiction, and he said, as a doctor, he has come to understand that there are some people who come here and they're not going to realize their potential. And it's a tragic sort of thing about humanity. But some people, are going to be able to find that like you did. And I wonder sometimes if it's because people just haven't been given the tools. They don't know that there's this inner resource within them that you obviously discovered. And we're given medication. We're told to get over it, all the things you were told. And yet there are ways, to sort of find your way home to yourself and be at peace. And I think maybe a lot of it's just education, which is why I love, what you're sharing here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a combination of a couple things. It's like there has to be some sort of like openness or willingness or this they call it the gift of desperation. It was like the most horrible part in my life, but I believe if I hadn't have gone through that, now, today, every day, I am generally a lot happier than most people. And I spent most of my life so much unhappier than most people. But because of this kind of horrific breaking open, falling apart to fall together type of experience, I ended up finding this inner truth that is little known when we're just mildly discontent with our lives. And we keep trudging on, but, we hit that pain point where I came to that point where it was like, I'm either going up or I'm going out. I mean, this is just, I couldn't fall any farther down.
So when you say that you're generally more unhappy right now than other people, what do you mean by that?
Now I'm generally happier.
So you're generally happier.
I'm much happier than most people that I know who are well-adjusted, normal, happy people. But I have access to this kind of higher state of consciousness. Do you know? It's grounded and it's deeply centered, but I have the ability to be really present. I know how to get rid of my mind chatter. I know how to not let negative thoughts take me over. So I find that even people who are, relatively happy in the world, I have this kind of center of peace that many people who haven't gone through the depth of desperation that I went through don't have access to. So that's all I'm saying. Most of my life, I was definitely way more unhappy than most people, and now I feel like I kind of jumped the spectrum.
Well, I think now too, and I know for myself, because I kind of had that same thing before this happened. It was just the general static of, happiness, and all I really had was happy and sad. Whereas now, when you're broken open like that, you really, you have access to the whole spectrum of emotions, despair and anger and all these things that we're taught, to not feel, and it's not okay. And that when they come, it doesn't have to be something where your life is derailed for 3 months or you're going to fall apart. You can say, oh, why? And you can be curious and question it and sort of go into that with, an inquiring mind, which I think is really important for people to not fear the emotions so much. So that's good. I feel the same way. I feel like I have a much greater range of, just feeling ups and downs sometimes, but mostly just generally really, feeling happy and satisfied. So.
Yeah, no, I get that. I really get that. Okay, so to pick up kind of where I was in the story. So the date that I chose for my suicide, it was a Sunday night that I just decided, I'm done. This is it. But I didn't want to leave my, people at work and all of that, people in the lurch, right? I didn't want to, I wanted to take care and leave everything in order before I took my own life. And so I just decided I'm going to do it Saturday. So I had 6 more days. And that Sunday evening, when I decided I was going to do it on Saturday, I thought, I don't even know if I can make it 6 days. There was something inside of me that didn't want to leave a mess of paperwork and all that stuff for other people to clean up. Like I wanted everything to be so that my taking my life wouldn't impact people negative. This was my thinking at the time. I know. Yeah, now I can look back and I just have so much compassion and sadness for how I felt at that time. But that's what made sense to me. I was like, I want to check out, but I want to leave as little wrinkles for other people to clean up as possible. Right. Anyway, so I decided that I would kind of take my life that following Saturday. And I had my bottle of vodka. I drank a bottle of vodka a day, and I had my bottle of anti-anxiety pills. And I just kept them in the cupboard. I said, this is going to be for Saturday. But that Sunday night, I didn't think I would be able to make it to Saturday. And so here was my other best thinking, was I thought, I wonder what would make me feel just a little bit better now for these next 6 days. And it occurred to me, you know what would make me feel better? If I saw what real drunks were like, what people who really have addiction are like, that would make me feel just a tiny bit better about myself. And then maybe I would have the, kind of gumption to get through this week, get everything I need done, and then get to Saturday. So I called an addiction recovery program. I was living in Santa Monica, California at the time, and there was one just up the street. So I called and said, hey, do you ever have meetings that people can sit in on? And they said, yeah, just, come on every single night at 6 o'clock, just follow the crowd of people. And I didn't really know that there would be that many people. I thought maybe, 10 or 15 people. And so he said, my plan was to just kind of go into the back and look around, not give anybody my name, and just kind of observe so I could feel a little bit better about myself. Well, what happened, I went to the meetings, the first couple of nights, and when I was listening to people talking about their stories, first of all, feeling suicidal, feeling like they wanted to check out of the world altogether, and what they had done as a drunk, as an alcoholic. And I thought, I'm way worse than what these people are sharing. They've never driven drunk, like they've never drank at work, and they belong here? How is it that I think I don't belong here, But what was really amazing was hearing people share about the depth of horrible anxiety inside of that self, that relating to that like emotional black hole. And I didn't tell anybody who I was. I didn't want to talk to a soul, but I would sit in the back and I couldn't stop the tears. And these two women in particular would come up to me every time I went and just hold my hands and just brush my hair away from my face, my tears, and just bring me tissues. And it was just, there was something about that human touch, that human love. I felt, even though I didn't say a word, I felt like these people kind of got it. They understood that emotional struggle, that suicidal, addictive struggle better than any of the doctors I'd ever spoken to, for whatever reason, Anyway, when I finally made it to Saturday, I thought, there's something here. There's something about the people in this room. There's something about the people here. And I don't think there's any hope for myself, but I'm also not ready to take my own life yet. And so it occurred to me, I can always just kill myself tomorrow. I don't have to do it today.
Now,
Today's Saturday.
Were you still drinking through this too?
Oh, yeah.
You were still,
yeah.
Okay. You still
I was drunk every single time I went there. I drank in my mornings, and nobody tried to stop me. I'm sure that they knew that I was drunk, but nobody tried to stop me from doing that. So that's what I did. And so one day at a time for 3 months, I would go to those meetings and I would be drunk and I would go to work and live my life. And I would tell myself, if today is the day, like I can kill myself today, I can kill myself tomorrow. Like if today doesn't feel right, I can always do it tomorrow. And so I kept my little stash in my cupboard in my apartment, and I just said, when the day comes, because I felt like the day would still come. There would be a day where I would go into those meetings and it would just feel like, this doesn't work either. So I'm just going to, so that was the feeling that I had. And I finally got to the point where, and throughout those 3 months, it's like I tried to quit drinking. I tried to prove I wasn't an alcoholic. Like I went through all of those type of things, like testing myself in 30 days sober and all of those. And it wasn't working. I just kept being drawn back to drinking. I couldn't quit it. And I finally decided, I'm ready to try what these people are talking about. And of course, if it doesn't work, I can kill myself anyway, but I'm open to trying it. I'm going to open myself up to this program. And what really inspired me to do that was this one particular woman who sat in front of the room and told her story. And she had we can't say a better or a worse story, but her adventures in her drunkenness just felt like they were a lot more intense than mine had been. And who she was in that moment, she was just so pulled together, so comfortable in her own skin that I thought, I want to be like she is. And if she could be, the way she describes it, feeling worse than I am feeling, and now she's like my idol right now.
Yeah.
Maybe I can talk to her. And so I started working with her, and it took me, a week or two to actually call her and get because I just felt like something was going to change in a big way if I actually did this work and gave up drinking altogether. So I called her and we had a meeting, and she said, you can absolutely have what I have. I know I can teach this to you. And so I said, okay, well, what should I do first? And I said, what's step one? And she said, we're not starting on step one. We're starting before step one, because I was such a mess, And she said, the first thing that you need to learn to do is to learn to meditate. Oh, and I remember looking at her like,
what?
Shouldn't I be like writing letters and not mailing them, or hitting pillows with baseball bats? It didn't make sense to me that I was supposed to sit still in some floaty, wistful, weird way, and that was going to possibly do something for me, Right. And I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in anything that was mystical or magical or whatever. Right. So, I totally balked, but she didn't even blink when I told her that that wasn't resonating with me. She didn't even blink. She said, Dina, it doesn't seem like your way is working. Why don't you try mine?
Good point. Thank you. Good point, right?
I know. And it was like the way that she held herself without blinking when I was protesting was like something drew me to her because of that. She was so stable in it. Anyway, so I agreed to start the meditation practice. And her specific instruction to me was to sit still every morning for 20 minutes and focus on my breathing. I didn't think it would do anything, but I thought, I'll try it. I'll just see. And she, and I trust her. I trusted her. And so I would start the first few mornings. I set the timer like she told me to. I sat on the couch like she told me to, my back straight, and I just attempted to focus on my breathing. Now, because of what I was going through at that time, like I was still physically detoxing from alcohol. The negative suicidal thoughts were still there.
But during you had stopped drinking at this point.
Yeah, but just like within a day or two. Okay. It was very recent, so I was very raw. And so I would sit still and try to focus on my breathing. And after about 2 minutes, my body would just start shaking and sweating uncontrollably. It was like this detox reaction or something, I don't know. And the negative thoughts would come up because I was being still and quiet, and they would just eat me alive. And after 3 minutes, it became intolerable for me to sit still for longer than that. So I would have to get up and move my body and go about my day. Like the 3 minutes was just, I maxed out. But later in the day, it would nag at me. Like the only thing she told me to do was to sit for 20 minutes, and I can't even do that. So I would sit and say, okay, I've got 17 minutes left. Let's see if I can do this, and set the timer. And again, shaking, sweating, negative thoughts, 3 minutes, I would max out. So it ended up that I would do these little 3-minute pockets several times a day, so that by the end of the day, I could call her and tell her, I did my homework. I did my 20 minutes. And what was extraordinary about this process was all I was doing, like I said, I had no higher power to speak of. I didn't know what I was supposed to be focused on or doing in those 3 minutes. I would do my best to focus on my breath, but I just kept hearing these same words in my head, and I would just say, I'm open, I'm willing, just show me. Just show me what to do. And I felt like it felt like relief to just say, I surrender. I'm open and willing to be shown. Whatever it is that I need to be doing or learning or seeing, I'm open to it. We'll see. And in the back of my head, I was like, if this doesn't work, I'm out. I'm going to take my life, And after 8 weeks of this messy 3 minute here, 3 minute there thing, I had an experience in what I can only call a state of higher consciousness. I was in one of my afternoon meditations, and I was at home on my apartment, and I opened my eyes out of the afternoon meditation, and I looked around my apartment, and everything was perfect. It wasn't necessarily, I hadn't dusted everything, or, it wasn't perfect in that way, but everything was just, I was so present in the moment that I was just noticing everything in my place and the beauty that it held. It was like, there is nothing wrong here. Everything in its own organic place and its own original essence is actually perfect and beautiful. And I noticed too that I had no mind chatter. I had no words in my head. And that had never happened to me before. As anybody who's listening in on this, and Diana, I'm sure you're familiar, the voice in the head always has a commentary.
Always there, running.
Always running, like a tape that doesn't shut up. I've read in different places, like we have 60 or 80,000 thoughts a day.
So it's... That is crazy. And where,
Yeah.
what are they? What are those thoughts? It is amazing. So yeah, and I know that feeling when you get to that point where the words aren't there. It is really incredible where you suddenly realize how full your head is all the time, and and full of
Yes.
what. So yeah, that's
I
cool.
know, nothing that's really feeding us. But that was what was extraordinary. It was realizing that there were no words in my head. It was the most deeply grounded, fully present, blissful, but at the same time grounded feeling I've ever felt in my life. It was extraordinary. If I had known it was possible to have access to that level of peace and presence, I thought that's how you feel when you die and go to heaven. That's what I thought that I was, that's how it felt to me, what I was experiencing. And it didn't feel like I was floating around. Like I felt like I was present in my body, but like just really expanded type of thing.
Right.
And after that experience, that state of consciousness lasted for me for 3 days. So as I was going about my days, going to work, going to my addiction recovery meetings and stuff, I would just be so fully present and focused, and this level of just non-resistance and full acceptance of whoever the person was that I was talking to. Normally, my mind would be chattering like, what's up with those red shoes? And how come you're wearing that? And I don't like your hairdo and all that stuff. But I just had like none of that. And it was just, I was almost seeing the essence of who people are. So that lasted for 3 days, and that changed my life. And that was only 8 weeks after my first time that I sat down to meditate. So that's the whole point. What we're talking about here is these little bursts of meditation with the intention of being open and willing to be shown something that's different than we've ever experienced before was like the absolute key. And today I'm able to, obviously I've released my attachment to addiction. I have used it to release weight from my body, because when I quit drinking, I started eating, and I had a lot of different things, different healings and transformations. In terms of just getting comfortable and being able to forgive and ask for forgiveness in relationships, and building a career and writing a book, and being able to financially support myself. All of that started with the mindset and the perspective that I cultivated within what I now call 3x3 meditation. So 3 minutes, 3 times a day.
Right. Wow. Goodness gracious. It's such a great story. I've heard some of it before, and I love how open and vulnerable you are, because I think it's just so many people's story. And what I really like is that, so it was 8 weeks from you stopped drinking and you began the meditation practice, and within that 8-week period. And so really it was just this ultimate kind of surrender, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that's
exactly it.
Yeah, and I have found that too. I think it's just this really big surrendering to the truth of what's before you, whether it's an addiction or whether it's someone who's committed suicide. There is something really powerful in just simply embracing the truth and allowing it to flow through you without resisting it and without drinking or trying to numb it away. It's very empowering. And so Dina, with that experience of going through the addiction and finding this path, I'm just curious, with people who are in the aftermath of a suicide, and suicide is such a tricky death, because it's the only death that I've come across, where we take it and we turn it, and so it becomes something that means something about the people left behind. There's this tremendous judgment about it and taboo, but it's sort of, ooh, bad mommy, bad spouse, bad, whatever. And people, really take that on, and it sort of becomes a whole narrative that takes on a life of its own in the aftermath. And because there is so much darkness, and similar to the darkness that you were talking about with your addiction, it is, to me, a lot of this is creating these pockets of refuge, poking holes into the darkness and creating light. So how do you think somebody who's in this place, they've lost a loved one, and there are different kinds of, suicide, it's kind of like cancer. I mean, there's breast cancer and there's prostate cancer, and, losing a child, I think, is very different to losing a friend or a sibling or a spouse. Like, there's different degrees of suicide too. So how would you say that your 3x3 meditation could help somebody who is really in that place where they're judging themselves, they don't have any compassion for themselves, and the self-love and connection have really been lost?
I think that, first of all, I can really feel those feelings. Like, I understand what that may feel like for other people. And just to kind of say, from my perspective, from being a suicidal person, I can say that I didn't want to take my life because of what anybody did or didn't do. It was not about that at all. So I don't know if that would help anybody to understand, like, it's not your fault that this has happened. It's not your fault that somebody has taken their life. And even if you can't believe that, to maybe just open yourself to the possibility of seeing it from a different perspective, because we can't really learn lessons from just hearing other people's experiences. We have to experience it ourselves. So in what you're saying about being able to poke holes in the darkness and just have little glimpses of light, I think, first of all, I think any meditation or self-healing modality that works for you is valid. And I love that. And I love it because there are so many different ones to choose from. But with 3x3 in particular, I'll talk about that just because it's my modality. But I want to just validate that I believe in all of them, and I think they're all really powerful. But I think that the way that 3x3 could help is to just open. And like me, you don't even have to believe in anything. You don't have to even wonder if some answer is going to rain down on you. All you need to do is shift the way that you're feeling about it to feeling just a little bit more open to seeing this from another perspective. So you might even, in meditation, that may be your time to just, like, you've got to grieve. You've got to let that emotion be there and let that emotion roll through you. And I know no other better way to do that than with the help of somebody like a mentor or a group. Like, when I was struggling my hardest times, I needed that group. I needed that mentor. That was my lifeline. I had to connect to these people more than one time a day. That, 3, 4, 5 times a day, sometimes I would need to check in just for that support, of people who understand what it's like from the inside. So being able to be raw and vulnerable, and even if you feel like you're not ready to share, to just surround yourself with people who are able to do that, who are able to kind of hold space for you. And then with the meditation in particular, just to start with, a minute here, a minute there, or 3 minutes, or 3 times, whatever feels right for you. You can put on a timer and then just open yourself up. Like, just even focus on your breath. There's this amazing intelligence in our bodies, our breathing takes place whether we're aware of it or not. And I believe that our breath can connect us to that which is greater than ourselves, because that intelligence is so much greater than ourselves, just the simple act of involuntary keeping ourselves alive, and so connecting with that, connecting to breathing, and just opening yourself up and just saying in the meditation time, if there's another perspective to see this from, I'm open to trying it on. You don't have to commit to trying it on. You don't have to get rid of your current perspective, but just to cultivate a little bit of openness. Because a lot of times we feel like the door is closed. There is no possibility. This is horrible. This is my fault. How I see it is how it is, and it cannot change. But the little bursts of meditation can help just to open up just a little tiny bit. Because I know that even that small little intention, that small little openness, if it's genuine and it's sincere and it's thorough, when you're feeling it, you actually you can tell, because you feel viscerally in your body, you feel a little bit of relief. You feel just a little bit better. And it's like building a muscle. The more often you can tap into it, the stronger that it's going to become, and the more that you'll be able to trust it. So that's what I would say for, just starting and processing this event and this experience.
Yeah, it's so true. I talk about it on my blog in the same way. It is like building a muscle. It's like running a marathon. You don't wake up and say, I'm going to run a marathon. I mean, maybe some people do, but most of the human race has to build up to it. And so it's stepping into it a little bit, and and I love the idea of just being open, just creating that openness, because with suicide you really are handed kind of this set of very archaic old ways of thinking about it. And, there's judgment, and people contract, and everybody's afraid. And you get into a really difficult place of trying to manage what other people are thinking about you, or, trying to going down that rabbit hole of interpreting what other people are thinking about the suicide. And, we have to understand that you can't. It's really not something that, that other people are going to think what other people are going to think. And all you can do is really bring this experience into your heart and try to keep creating new perspectives about it. And I love that, because I found the same thing when I meditated. It was just all of a sudden out of nowhere, a shift would happen, and a new idea would come in, and it would be like, oh, I can think about it that way. I don't have to think about it this way. And then it was just that pocket of relief. And, again, and that just kept getting bigger and bigger, and, making it a little bit easier. So,
yeah.
One of the things, and I don't know how you view meditation in terms of, I know it's creating this connection with the source outside yourself, but my feeling with suicide is that, there's just a bigger message out there. I mean, we have close to 1 million people a year taking their lives on the planet right now, which to me suggests something is not working very well here. And, is it that we're not connecting with ourselves? To me, it's an invitation to explore this, how we're connecting with ourselves, and also how we're connecting with each other. And so, how would you sort of say meditation gives you that connection to yourself that's really different? It's a different way of being in the world, isn't it?
It's a very different way of being in the world. And it's a way that I think is not readily understood by most people. Once you get to that place and you just own the piece that you have, you can hold your own with it the way that, a soloist and the whole chorus, you've got 100 people singing behind you on one note and you're singing a different note. Usually it's easier. We get sucked into the way that everybody else is singing. We can't hold that note. But when you get grounded with this, you'll be able to hold seeing it in a different way. What I know, what I access, here's the analogy that I use, is that why I felt so desperate, even when I was little, and even when I was going through all of the modalities that I was seeking, the therapies and the medications and stuff, what I was looking for was just a sense of well-being inside of myself, and I never ever had that. Just that normal sense of waking up in the morning and I'm well adjusted. I'm a balanced person. I can have access to this happiness, and I feel like it's plugging in our power cord. So we need to, in order to thrive in the world, we need to feed ourselves. We generally feed ourselves 3 times a day. So I say 3 by 3 is like nourishing your soul 3 times a day. You need to nourish your body. You need to nourish your soul and your emotional life. If the word soul or spirit doesn't resonate with you, think of it as nourishing your emotional life. Think of it as nourishing that non-tangible, the stuff that isn't your body, your mind, your emotions. So what I think of is this image of a power cord. So I believe we are all born with this sense of empowerment. We're designed to be empowered. And I don't mean arrogant and aggressive. I just mean, having a healthy sense of self-esteem and a healthy sense of self-confidence, and knowing that you are a valuable contributing person here in the world and you're equal to everybody else. Like we're all just you are as good as everybody else, and that's what I was always missing. So it felt to me like there was a source of power. I call it my inner source of power, peace, and wisdom. And you may call it God or spirit or soul, but that's how I like to refer to it. It's my inner source of power, peace, and wisdom. And yes, it's greater than myself, but it's also woven within myself. So that inner source of power, peace, and wisdom is like plugging in my power cord. Well, when my power cord is unplugged and I don't know how to plug it in, because it's not something you learn in school, you don't learn how to be spiritually centered or learn self-esteem. It's something that you may pick up on or develop by yourself. There's no class to teach you how to do that. So the way that I feel with that power cord analogy is that when we're born, we are plugged in. We're naturally designed to do that. We're naturally designed to feed and nourish our bodies, and we're naturally designed to keep plugging into that inner source of power, peace, and wisdom, that which is greater than ourselves, to get that sense of well-being. Well, when we don't know how to plug ourselves in, we start plugging into food and money and men and booze. We just start plugging into these things outside of ourselves to get that feeling of well-being. For a while, when I was just dating everybody on the planet, it was kind of working. That's why I was doing it. And I was just obsessed with meeting all these different guys, because the attention I was getting would give me a fleeting glimpse of that self-esteem that I was so thirsty for, that sense of I'm a valuable person. And for a while it was money. If I can just be financially stable and take care of myself, that's all I need. And then you get restless because you realize, okay, I've been with like 300 guys already and this isn't working, or I have all the money that I need and why am I still unhappy? Or, like these things outside of ourselves are not meant to. It's the same thing how you described your experience with alcohol. It works for a fleeting minute, and then you end up worse off than you had it to begin with. It's a hollow answer. It's not the answer that we're designed for. So it's the same thing with because I used to struggle with junk food and stuff. I could probably eat 5,000 calories of junk food and still be hungry because I wasn't feeding what the cells of my body needed. I wasn't feeding what they were hungry for. So I could be explode in eating way too much and carrying extra weight on my body and still feel this hunger, because even though I'm feeding it food, I'm not feeding it what it needs. And it's the same thing with plugging in that power cord. So I think that, to get back to your question, about that, what you're accessing to get to that source of peace inside of yourself, I think of it like plugging into that inner source of power, peace, and wisdom, the voice of your intuition, the peace that it underlies all of life, and so in the meditation time, just thinking of it as, let me access this feeling of peace. Or even just, if you're not at that point yet, open yourself up to I wonder if it's possible to ever be peaceful. I'm open to the possibility of finding peace through this. I'm open to the possibility of seeing this in a different way. So in that way, that meditation can be the vehicle, like food is the vehicle to nourish your body. This can be the vehicle to, kind of get access to what you need to plug into, or what you need to nourish yourself emotionally and spiritually in order to be able to get yourself back in balance.
Right. Right. So in your 3x3 meditation, then, are you actively, I know that Jeff Cannon from the Huffington Post called you kind of part of a new breed of meditation, modern meditation. Are you visualizing? Are we just sitting down and sort of having these great suggestions that you've just said about being open? Are you visualizing stuff and actively trying to, take your mind with the imagination somewhere? Or is it really just more of a surrendering, of starting with a prompt during those 3 minutes and sticking with the breath? And what happens when that thought comes in? What are you doing with that?
Okay, so I use meditation for everything that you're talking about. But in the beginning, I'm specifically talking about the very basic openness because of probably the audience that we're speaking to right now. If we were talking to an audience that was like, hey, I want to manifest more financial freedom for myself, I might say, okay, bring in an image of what you want to create in your life and visualize that success and take inner prompts and get the intuitive guidance that you're getting. So you can use meditation, or if it's weight loss, visualize that you're able to connect with the cells of your body and you're actually listening to what they're calling for when you're eating. So you have this much more satisfying relationship and experience with food. So for different things, you can use different connection points and visualizations. So, but in particular for what we're talking about and just trying to be able to release a little bit of the darkness, that's where I'm saying, just opening with that question or that intention of I'm open, I'm willing, just show me. So when you're in meditation, if you feel like you're noticing thoughts that are going by, something that I have done before is, as I'm seeing a thought of, I forgot to go to the grocery store, I have to pick up the dog from the vet, I forgot to get my kid, all these thoughts are coming in. And so just putting a little bit of a bubble around them and letting them float away. So that this way, because what happens, the reason that we get so tortured by our own minds is because each thought bubble, if you follow my little, just play with me here. So each little thought bubble, it's almost like it encompasses us. And so that becomes our identity, or that becomes the obsession. That's all that we think about. So instead, we can notice that these are thoughts, but they're not us. They're not our identity. We can actually have the ability and power to choose which thoughts we want to focus on, rather than just, hey, that thought's here, I might as well let it take me over. That's the experience most people have, is that whatever thought is coming into their head, we could be driving down a street and we see a car that reminds us of our dad, who we had a horrible relationship with, and we're actually in a good mood and all of this, and we see this car and it's suddenly we're in this terrible mood and we have all these bad memories. Nothing happened. It was just the thought was there and completely encompassed us. And I'm not saying deny your emotions. When emotions come up, to be able to be present with them and process them with a group or with a mentor, absolutely. I'm not saying deny your emotions. But what I am saying is that so many times that's why we feel like we're on this roller coaster, is because when there's a trigger that comes up, instead of recognizing and saying, like, I'm feeling triggered right now, this is something I want to bring up with my group later, with my mentor later, and being able to get yourself back to focusing where you are, we get just completely taken over by this. And so that's what, when you're meditating, if you feel like these thoughts are coming in, just try and put a little bubble around them, you know, or I'll even say, I'll worry about you 3 minutes from now, but right now I'm focused here. You know, so that's kind of how I quiet it. And I also want to say, like, if you sit for 3 minutes in meditation and you have 895 thoughts that come in, that's not a failure. Everybody thinks, oh, I had all these thoughts, I'm totally a failure at meditation. It's not true. Because it's actually a win, because there's 895 thoughts that used to just take you over, and now you're actually becoming aware of them. So that's what you're cultivating, is like that awareness where your mind and what is there for you right now doesn't have to take you over and become everything that you think about just because you got triggered by seeing a certain color car, you know?
Right. And so even for somebody who's, you know, maybe sitting in the really darkest moment of, because, you know, we're not trained in feeling our emotions, and we're afraid of them, I think. I mean, they are very scary. I remember, you know, when I first started going through this, it is, you know, you do feel like, and there's almost a catch-up period, like all your feelings have never been felt are going to be coming up. And I think that's what's so hard about suicide is, you know, we I think as in general have these beliefs about ourselves, you know, whether it's we're unworthy or we don't deserve good things, and then we intersect a suicide, and you have this unbelievable, you know, event that represents abandonment and all these different things, and that's just triggering all those beliefs that go way, way back to long before this ever happened. So you have to kind of, you know, separate them out to a certain degree. So when someone's sitting in this meditation, Dina, and a thought comes up that, you know, I'm bad, I should have stopped it, I didn't do what I could, it's my fault. Is that the same kind of thing that you would say, try to put that in a bubble and let that go? Or, you know, do you just say, oh, I'm having that thought and, you know, it's not true? Like, how would you handle something like that?
Okay, this is a good one, and I think that you're touching on something really important, because it's the difference between because that thought, if that thought comes in and that emotion comes in, it'll still be there if you want to process it. Because I would encourage this, I encourage it because it was so what worked for me, is that whenever I went through something or was reliving something or having that horrific, almost overwhelming experience, I needed to share it with somebody else. So if an intense moment and an intense thought where it's like, I can't even get myself out of this, I'm paralyzed in the middle of meditation, stop the meditation and pick up the phone and reach out, because that is the best way that I know how to process something that comes overwhelming like that. So if it's absolutely overwhelming and you feel paralyzed and you can't move forward, that's where I would abort with the meditation and go and pick up the phone and call somebody. Because what you'll notice is the more that you're able to share and process and get that fellow community understanding of what you're going through, when you go into meditation, those will have been healed a little bit, so it won't have the big claws on it anymore to be able to take you over. So and that's what would happen to me. That's why it became impossible for me to sit for more than 3 minutes at a time, because the overwhelming negative thoughts and, you know, I'm a horrible person, all this stuff would completely take me over, and I would just have to get up. It was just, besides the physical detox, like the negative thoughts were just like, it was intolerable for me to sit through that. So what I would say is, like, if it has that level of intensity where you just feel like you're being completely overwhelmed by an emotion and it's the right time in that moment to process it, remove yourself from the meditation, reach out. If it feels like this is an old trigger of something that's, you know, it has a less intenseness to it, it just feels like it's an old trigger or an annoying negative thought, that's where you can put the little bubble around it and kind of separate yourself, you know? So, and if it's something that feels like, you know, I want to think about this or bring this to my group or my mentor at another time, I want to bookmark it. Definitely, when you come out of meditation, write down a little list of the things that popped up for you, and then you can process those emotions in the proper way. So, because I never, ever, ever would encourage anybody to process anything this dark and this heavy alone at all. I don't think we're designed for that.
I don't either. I mean, and I think that's the very difficult part with suicide, is it's hard to find those support groups where it's focused on, on movement. And a lot of them, I think, tend to just remain, the people kind of remain just marinating in the pain rather than, being given these modalities and things, to start working through it, which is, very sad. But I love that. And I think another powerful tool for me was writing. When those thoughts came up, it's almost like just getting them out of your head, whether it's speaking it, and if you can't find somebody to speak to and express it that way, then I think another really powerful way is to take, pen to paper and just write down how you're feeling, and don't sugarcoat it, let those feelings flow.
Just let it be raw, because, and this is something too, when we're processing feelings, and this is separate from meditation, but just in general, the way that when we're processing feelings, most of the time it feels worse when you first let yourself go into it. But after you let yourself, and you just kind of accept, like, I'm here, this is going to roll through me, I'm with somebody who's I'm safe with, I can completely let this roll through me, it'll release. It's almost like it hangs on to you until you have this shift inside of yourself where you just kind of allow it to be there, and then it no longer needs to be there. It's so amazing how emotions heal and flow through like that. So I understand why we're afraid of them, because the first few moments and first couple of minutes where we actually let it be there, it does get a little bit worse. It does get more painful because we're allowing it to be there. But in that, where we just say, like, I'm open to being shown, I'm open to being able to release this. That sort of, I'm open to letting this flow through me so that I can be free because of it. I want to process this so that I don't have to relive this all the time. When we actually let it be there in the presence and company of people who are supporting of us, it lets us go, Well,
it's almost like, when you want to go out and do a run, or there's that first 5-10 minutes, right, where it just sucks. You don't want to be doing it, but you always feel better. Or jumping in. For me, jumping in Lake Tahoe has always been a huge one. I'll stand on the end of that pier for hours because I know how cold it is, and I'm always so happy when I do it. And not to trivialize this, but I do think there is a big sort of learning curve in just learning to tolerate the discomfort of those emotions in the beginning, because they really do pass through. And unfortunately, I know you've done a lot of research on neuroplasticity, and that's a big fascination of mine with the brain. It's so exciting, all these different things that are going on, but we're up against, just this massive, amygdala, the reptilian brain that is seeking survival. Am I safe? Am I safe? And so when you've been doing something like drinking, which is not safe at all, but as far as the brain's concerned, that old archaic sort of lizard sitting in there, it's safe because you're still here, you're still functioning. And all of a sudden you're trying to change it because you're not drinking anymore and you're actually thinking about your thoughts. And it's going to fire up. I mean, I notice sometimes, over the past 4 years, there's these periods where it's almost like it's fighting back so hard to say, no, I'm not letting go yet. And then, and then you pass through that and you become almost able to access even higher parts of your emotions in your brain and everything. So we're up against a lot of invisible forces that I think people have to be aware of. So yeah, interesting. Yeah. Good tools though, really good tools. So there's an interesting quote in your book from Bruce Lipton that I really wanted to talk about. He says, being fully present means not having a negative interpretation of what is happening in the moment. It's being an unbiased observer of it. And I mean, that's really what meditation is, isn't it? And what you're talking about, just being with a suicide is so, it's just so difficult. There's nothing about it that is easy or comfortable, but getting out of the story that we put around it and getting out of the desire to discharge the pain by either denying or blaming it, and just allowing the reality of the other person's choice, to be there with you, can be so powerful, can't it? I mean, just like going through an addiction, I see so many parallels with this.
Yeah, it's really true. And because where we get disconnected is when we resist what is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think Bruce Lipton is talking about. It reminds me of the serenity prayer. Enable me to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. So it's like, accept the things I cannot change. We have so much resistance because this should not be.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be this way. I didn't want this way. Why did this happen? And when we have resistance to the present moment, those are the emotions that we need to let process. Those are the emotions we need to release, that we need to let come through. And what's so amazing, like I know through the healing that I went through, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I was a bad person. Like, I was stealing money from people. I was completely out of integrity with my employers. I lied to all of my friends. I was waking up next to guys that I'd never even met. It was just who I was not, you wouldn't look at me, who I was, and say, wow, what a winner.
You're a human making bad choices. I mean, bad person can be one thing to look at it, but I think when we are out of integrity and out of alignment, we make bad choices. We're trying to seek that connection, that belonging, and it's like a kid. When you have kids, they're going to find ways to get attention, whether it's through good or through bad things. It's not always, it's not that we're always, we just want to be seen. Humans want to be seen, felt, and heard, don't we? I mean, the connection piece, I think, is so huge in all of this. And, clearly something that we really need to take a really good, hard look at, because we've got so many kids taking their lives. We've got, all these demographics of people that are, just finding life to be not what they anticipated, and not something that is filling them up and giving them what they need. And it's just such a tragedy. And I, as one, speaking from living in the aftermath, and I love that you're able to speak from a place of actually having, been thinking about taking your life and being able to say that it wasn't about anybody else. The aftermath is really wicked. It's a difficult place to navigate, because there are so many different components that one is trying to figure out and unravel. And, for a lot of people, I think it's just too much. They just take it all, they pack it away, and they put it in a drawer, as it were, and the family never talks about it. And, it's hushed and whispers. And, we all know that those kinds of energetic traumas don't go away. I mean, they're going to get bigger, and they're going to, one day there's going to be a reckoning. And I think, unfortunately, people have to really kind of come to terms with that.
Yeah, no, you're right. And you're touching on something that's really important, because everybody is doing the best they can from where they are and the resources that they have. When I was doing all of that stuff, that was the best that I could do. That was the best that I could see. And the level of self-forgiveness and self-compassion and non-judgment that I have for myself is extraordinary compared to, because I used to think I was a bad person. That was the judgment that I had on myself. And being able to have this compassion and self-forgiveness is absolutely, it's possible for anybody.
Now, let's dive into that a little bit. Like, where did that come from? Because that's another, I think, big component to this whole living in the aftermath, piece, is really finding that compassion for yourself and the forgiveness. Those are two huge pieces that I talk a lot about. So where do you think that came from for you, for yourself?
I think that it had a lot to do with me cleaning up the messes that I had made and the people that I had hurt. So if I knew that I had stolen from or hurt or whatever, different people in my life, being able to, first of all, just own that I had done that, and admit it to myself, because there was always some kind of excuse. Oh, I did that because he did this and whatever, to just own that I may have hurt them or done something that was hurtful or taken from them when taken what wasn't mine. And just to find that ownership with it. And what I did, I even used meditation for this, that it would be like, I'm open to having a conversation with this person, but see, I'm not ready to have that conversation of, hey, I stole from you, but you were such a jerk anyway. Like, I'm not ready if I don't have forgiveness of whatever they may have done to me too,
Right.
So that was a huge part of me being able to have compassion and forgiveness of myself. It wasn't even that other people had forgiven me. That didn't have anything to do with it. Before I had any conversations, finding that place inside of myself where it was like, yes, I did this, and I understand that was what I saw as the best from the time, at the time, almost the way that you were saying, you would have compassion for a child who's trying to figure it out, or a person who's in horrible pain. That's just, but that was the experience that I had. And being able to go back, own and bring to the light those parts of my life that I was ashamed of. If you would have told me that I would be speaking openly with more than 5 people on this planet about what I went through, I didn't even want to do that. But now it's just, it doesn't bother me. It's no longer a trigger for me. I'm totally like kind of see-through, like transparent. It all just kind of goes through. And that's the level of freedom that you can get to. Like you said, like not stuffing it into the drawer, not, hey, we don't want to talk about this, but bringing it where it's, let me process this so that I can find peace. Let me process this because it is something that I can't change, and I want to be able to have this, situation or experience, as tragic and horrible as it is. I don't want this to define who I am for the rest of my life.
So true. Oh my gosh, so true. And ownership, another huge piece. And I think I feel the same as you. I never in a million years could have imagined that I would be talking about,
Yep.
I didn't raise my hand, but here I am. And I think that's it. I think it's the ownership piece. And when you really own all the parts of it, and you explore it with, this tender curiosity of, looking at yourself with compassion, you can stand in front of people. And I'm, when I tell people my story, there are people who, I can see them contract, and I know that that's about them. It's not about me. It's not, and this isn't me trying to make myself feel better. I know that they have some wounds that they haven't healed yet. And I feel very transparent, and I feel very comfortable talking about all the different aspects of this, because I think it's so important. And I think if people can really understand that ownership piece, it's like the key that opens the door to the compassion and the forgiveness. And then when you do that for yourself, you're able to turn it out into the world and see people in such a different way, aren't you? I mean, it's a whole different level of living, and not to sound all, sort of spiritual woo-woo sanctimonious about it, right? I mean, I don't think that I ever could have realized that this is how we should feel. Like, this is really, the compassion should be so much deeper than just kind of, those poor people over there. Oh, it's such a, you really feel people's tragedies, and you really understand their suffering on a much different level because you've been through it and you get it. So,
yeah. Really true. Very well said.
Lovely. Yeah. Well, gosh, Dina, I could talk to you all day, and I'm so honored that you came and spent some time with me. And so people who want to find you can go check out her book, which I highly recommend. It's a wonderful read, and it has her techniques in it. But if they want to find you on the internet or work with you, where would they find you, my friend?
The best place is just my website. So same as the book title, madlychasingpeace.com.
Okay. Okay, great. And you do one-on-one work with people and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I do coaching with individuals. I do some coaching with businesses in the business world, and I also do coaching certification. So I teach people how to be 3x3 meditation certified coaches too. Okay. So those are the 3 kind of main prongs, I guess, of my work. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's awesome.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and I feel like we shared some really good information here for people to start with, and it's just stepping your toes in the water, isn't it? And just, continuously going again and again and letting the space open up for you. And I think that your process is just fabulous for that.
Thank you. I just have so much gratitude that our paths have crossed, and I love the work that you're doing in the world and the energy that you hold as you share your wisdom. So I'm just, so grateful for what you're creating here with us. Thank you.
Thanks, honey. All right. Yeah, take care, and we'll see you soon.
Okay.
All right, bye, everyone. Bye.